Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, uh, now we were discussing the governance portion. We started a discussion on the CAG. So, we'll complete CAG first, and then we'll first complete the electoral reforms. Then election. Ma'am has not discussed election commission also. So, I'll briefly talk about the constitutional provisions of election commission. Also, the major points from prelims point of view that you need to remember. And then we'll go to the major substantive issue of electoral reforms. Please be quiet. And talking about, and then we'll talk about electoral reforms. Electoral reforms is another important topic from your exam point of view. There have been many questions asked in the past in your mains examination. That is there. So we'll focus on that after it. I've told them to, I've given for the printout. I think you'll get the printout for tomorrow. By tomorrow for both CAG and election commission. Okay. And please be patient and quiet both. Okay. Now, let's start. In terms of CAG, we had discussed before issues with respect to appointment. With respect to appointment, I'm just revising what we discussed before. That with respect to appointment, we said that it is dominated primarily by the executive and there is no role for the legislature or primarily the opposition. And this can result in possible allegations. And this can result in possible allegations of conflict of interest, as was in the case of Shashikant Sharma. So, that is something that we discussed. Then, issues with respect to appointment was one thing. The other thing was with respect to the jurisdiction of CAG. And in terms of jurisdiction of CAG or in terms of the powers of CAG, where we talked about the scope of audits, right? And the scope of audits, we talked about that the CAG has time and again asserted that the scope of its audit is not just compliance or financial audits, but also performance audits, right? And here we talked about that how the CAG's performance audits has sometime been a matter of controversy also. But at the same point of time, such performance audits are very essential to enforce accountability of government expenditure. And accountability of government expenditure primarily from the view of assessing what? Outcomes. Assessment of outcomes. And also we talked that in terms of performance audits, that's one thing. The other thing was that we also discussed the question that can the CAG audit private companies? And here we talked about that in terms of CAG auditing private companies, the understanding has been largely that whether when there is a revenue sharing agreement between the private player and the government, or there's a revenue sharing agreement, or there is the allocation of scarce natural resources such as spectrum, etc. In both the conditions, you see what? That a CAG audit is totally justifiable, as was said in the telecom in the Unified Telecom Services Provider case. Right. So I told you all of this before also. Now, what we are going to move forward in the discussion today is primarily going further than this and talk about two other things. I told you one is that for the specific and the essential working of the CAG often depends on the PAC. I told you that the CAG reports are used by the Public Accounts Committee. Right. Now, so for CAG to be really effective, the issues with respect to the working of the Public Accounts Committee also need to be resolved. Now, what are these issues with respect to the working of Public Accounts Committee? Okay. Now, the issues with respect to the need of, or what are the issues with respect to the Public Account Committee that need to be worked out with? Firstly, you should know some things about the Public Accounts Committee. It has, as you know, it has 15 members from the Lok Sabha and it is primarily a body of the Lok Sabha. Though, and this is something that you must know from prelims point of view also, though it has 7 additional members from the Rajya Sabha, which are appointed as a matter of convention. Also, this appointment is on the basis of a proportional representation system, meaning on the basis of proportional representation in the Lok Sabha. So if you had 50% of the seats in the Lok Sabha, you will have 50% of the seats within the PAC. Okay, the Public Accounts Committee as well. It's according to your proportion of the number of seats you have in the Lok Sabha. The term is 1 year. The term is 1 year. Okay. By convention, often the PAC chairman is the leader, is a member of the opposition. So, the PAC chairman is appointed by whom? The speaker. And by convention is led by opposition. Because the PAC is like a part of the mini parliament. Now, the role of the PAC is that it scrutinizes, it takes the CAG report on any particular expenditure as an input and then works and then uses the CAG report to scrutinize. For example, if there's a Rafale deal happening right now or a CAG report on that issue, the CAG report will scrutinize, the PAC will take up the CAG report on the Rafale deal. It will use the CAG report as one input, but it will use other inputs from other players. It may call, it may call the views of, it may ask for views of other individuals also, say retired government officials or, retired persons who had been in charge of defense procurement in the Ministry of Defense before, or retired people or generals of the army or whatever. And so it will use CAG report as an input, and if it wants clarification, it can call the Ministry of Defense secretary again to give a submission, or it can even call the CAG's office to give additional clarifications as and when required. So the PAC does a closer scrutiny of the CAG report and then makes its own report. Okay, and PAC depends upon the CAG report as one of the most vital inputs for carrying out its function. Now, it is in this context that often it is argued that for the CAG reports to have a desired effect, to have a desired impact, for the CAG reports to have a desired impact, it is essential For the CAG reports to have a desired impact, it is essential. It is essential that the PAC is a what? Functional institutions. Is a functional institution. In the sense that if the PAC functions well, the CAG will also, its report will also have a better scrutiny and also will have a better impact, because the CAG itself cannot hold the government accountable. It is the job of the PAC. Okay, it's not CAG's job to hold the government accountable. The CAG's job is to assist the PAC to hold the government accountable. Yes, it is true that the CAG takes office oath on the Constitution of, in the name of Constitution of India. That's all true. But the CAG's role is to uphold the Constitution through the PAC, not by bypassing the PAC. That's there. Now, what are the issues? Now, this much background is important to understand the issues. Is the color visible at the back? Yes? Okay. So, issues with respect to working of the PAC. There are a number of issues with respect to working of the PAC. Firstly, the PAC's term is 1 year and it is reconstituted after every 1 year. Second, I'll explain in detail a bit, but just hold on. The second major issue with the PAC is that its term is 1 year. The second major issue with the PAC is that the proceedings of PAC are not open to public. Okay, proceedings, I am not saying report. The report obviously is tabled in the House, and the report is tabled in the House, and the report is public, but the proceedings of the meeting are not public. So you can't, just like you can watch the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha sessions on TV live, you cannot watch the proceedings of the PAC. Okay, so that's another issue which is said. Now, देखिए, also one of the last things is that there is a lack of formalization of procedures with respect to working of PAC. Lack of formalization of procedures with respect to working of PAC. Okay, what is this? I'll tell you all three of them. Firstly, the first thing is, who are PAC members? They are sitting MPs of the Lok Sabha and partly of the Rajya Sabha as well. Now, every party has a certain number of seats. The party decides whom they want to send to the PAC. Okay, that's there. Now, these individuals who are appointed to the PAC, they have a term of 1 year. And the PAC as a whole has a term of 1 year. Every 1 year it is reconstituted. Now, what this happens is that if a first-time MP is becoming a member of the PAC, he may not have the requisite experience. So, in the PAC, you are going to scrutinize CAG reports on a variety of issues. Suppose you have a first-time MP, you have never ever scrutinized the report of any ministry. Okay. And that means that these individuals often lack expertise and experience to understand what is written in the CAG report. And thus, they would have to do a lot of hard work initially. Okay. And by the time they gain some amount of experience in scrutinizing, say PSC reports, their tenure is over. And they may or may not be reappointed in the next term. Okay. So in that context, in the next year, so what happens is that what can always happen is that the PAC at any point of time within the PAC, though there may be 22 members, all may not have the requisite level of expertise required to scrutinize a report. So what has been suggested, do you get this point? This concern is there on a number of grounds, because CAG reports may be a bit technical and it may be a bit difficult to grasp on an initial level. But if they were to have a term of say 5 years, then they would pick up the expertise in the first 1 or 2 years and then use them in the later third or fourth or fifth year. So it has been suggested that the term of the PAC must be expanded to make it coterminous with the parliament. If the PAC itself is a mini parliament and it is basically a representative of the parliament itself, then why should its term be 1 year? Once a composition is fixed, it must also stay for 5 years or as long as the parliament is functioning. Even if the parliament gets dissolved, say in 2.5 years, then a new PAC can be constituted after fresh elections. Because this will allow them to build more experience with respect to scrutinizing CAG reports. That's one thing. Okay. So one of the suggestions as a way forward for this has been suggested. This is there even with respect to local governance. In local governance, a seat which is reserved for a women candidate, that particular seat is reserved for 1 term of 5 years. Now, what happens is that by the time she is entering the panchayat for the first time, getting used to and understanding how local governments work, her tenure is over. And the next time, the reserved constituency is shifted to somewhere else. What this results in, that the women who acquired some experience in the first time, her chances of winning the elections drop drastically if the reserved seat is transferred somewhere else. And whatever expertise she would have gained in the past 5 years, built contacts within the bureaucracy or whatever, they cannot be put to effective use if she doesn't win again the next time. And the next time, the reserved seat is shifted somewhere else. Do you get this point? It's as simple as this. I mean, the local governance may be a point hai, that if there were all these seats, suppose these 2 seats were reserved for the 1 term. Next term, what happens is that these 2 seats are no longer reserved. Some other seat is reserved. And what this does is that at any one point of time, those who had gained experience during their first term, their chances of winning the next term actually drastically diminish. So one of the things which has been suggested, I'm not getting into local governance for now, but this is the broader idea that you see here, that the PAC term is 1 year, it is reconstituted after every 1 year. The way forward that has been suggested is that the PAC's term must be made coterminous. The PAC term must be made coterminous with PAC's term must be made coterminous with Parliament at a 5-year term, so that PAC members gain requisite expertise to effectively scrutinize CAG reports and to effectively scrutinize CAG reports. That's enough. So that's one of the first things with respect to what? The terms. That's one issue. The next issue is that their deliberations are not open to public. See, one of the things is that the deliberations are not open to public. While this, what it does is that PSC reports take a, once pehle comes the CAG report, then the CAG report will be scrutinized by the PSC. Then PSC will submit its report. So by the time all this process happens, there is a considerable lag or a delay. Suppose there is the CAG is doing a report on demonetization right now. It is apparently doing some report on demonetization. By the time it submits the CAG report, the CAG submits report on demonetization, it goes to PSC where it is discussed, then PSC makes its report. Next election would be over. So the issues may lose importance because the proceedings are not open to public, and there may be considerable delay in tabling of what? PAC and CAG reports. And there may be considerable delay in tabling of PAC and CAG reports. Now, how does it affect the whole working? How does it affect the whole working is essentially, how does it affect the whole working is that it may cause a considerable delay. So now what they are saying is, what has been suggested as a way forward is that if you make the PSC proceedings themselves open to public, then what it can allow is the public a first-hand knowledge about the issue involved, about the kind of questions being raised, and the the position of the government or other stakeholders on the issue being discussed. So the public will get a first-hand view of the situation. Suppose there is a CAG report on Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or on right to education or on Narega, etc. How are these government schemes functioning? That's the question people ask all the time, right? That how are these schemes functioning? If the PSC carries out a thorough deliberation and these proceedings are open to the public can get first-hand information about the assessment of impact of these government welfare schemes, etc. or on schemes on which money is being spent by the government. However, one of the counters to this has been said was this, that if you make the proceedings open to the public, then the PAC members may resort to political posturing, as they do in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Once the proceedings become open to public, then there will be a tendency to take a hardline stand, not a very nuanced approach, and try to play to the galleries like you're doing on reality TV. Okay. So, or in the sense that just like Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, वो paper फेंक रहे हैं, वो mic को काट के मार रहे हैं, वो ये कर रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं. All of that will start happening in the PSC also. Okay, that is the argument which is given. However, perhaps this kind of a caution is kind of partly unwarranted. This kind of a caution is partly unwarranted because if the parliamentarians are themselves not willing to conduct themselves according to their position and stature, then that cannot be an argument for non-transparency. Rather, the public must have every right to get a first-hand information in the interest of transparency, which is considered essential for any kind of good governance. So that is why it is important that these reports are made, these proceedings are also made public. If you look at PSC reports, normally they are pretty good. Okay, so the way forward for this also, which has been suggested, is that the proceedings of PSC must be made The proceedings of PAC must be made public to allow closer scrutiny public scrutiny through first-hand information. Through first-hand information. Okay, now and the lack of formalization of procedures with respect to working of the PAC says the lack of formalization of procedures with respect to the working of the PAC is this, that PAC gets a number of CAG reports. It doesn't pick up every CAG report to have an intensive discussion. It is the discretion of the PAC chairman to decide which CAG report to have a closer look at. Okay, because the PAC is not possible for the PAT at times to, scrutinize all CAG reports. So, which CAG reports it must take a closer look at is the discretion of the PAC chairman. And if the PAC chairman decides to not pick up a certain issue, then, there is no rules on the basis of which it decides. So it's not that PAC members sit and vote and decide which issue to pick up for a closer or which report to have a closer discussion on. The PAC does not decide this either by consensus or by majority. It is only the discretion of the PAC chairman. So what has been argued is that PAC, in the lack of formalization of procedures with respect to the working of the PAC gives what? And now you may say, sir, isme problem kya hai? Because the PAC chairman is the opposition. PAC chairman comes from the opposition. So the opposition has the right to decide which issues it wants to pick up in a closer scrutiny, or the opposition leader, opposition appointed, opposition member, leader has the right to decide. But what if the ruling party and the opposition party both don't want to discuss the same issue? जैसे अभी funding of political parties will come. What if BJP and the Congress both don't want to discuss that issue? Other parliamentarians want to, but maybe the BJP and the Congress don't want to. Then in that context, basically what has been said is that under the that there is a lack of formalization of procedures with respect to the working of the PAC, which gives vast powers to the PAC chairman and rules need to be formulated to decide which issues will be it gives vast powers to the PAC chairman, and rules need to be formulated to decide which issues will be given which issues will be picked up by PAC for a closer deliberation. For a closer deliberation. So that's about the CA, that's about the PAC and the working of the CAG reports. Is that much clear? Okay, this was the third major issue that we discussed. The fourth issue that we're going to talk about is primarily about the fourth major issue that we're going to talk about is the quality of CAG reports themselves. Okay. So it's not that for the first time that P. Chidambaram has said something about the quality of CAG reports. Quality of CAG reports has been a topic of long-standing discussion. That a lot of attention and rightly so, a lot of media attention and rightly so has gone towards what does the CAG have to say on a particular issue, and that is a welcome development that at least some sections of the media are willing to take a closer look at the CAG reports. That's a welcome development. However, that also has led to some questions about the quality of CAG reports. That's the fourth major issue that we are talking about, the quality of CAG reports. Now, when we talk about the quality of CAG reports,
to understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
okay, so the quality of CAG reports. Now, with respect to the quality of CAG reports, actually all of this, I'll just tell you a brief of the context of this. All of this context and this whole debate came out in a much bigger way in the public after the 2G scam. So, or after the 2G telecom spectrum allocation issue, there were questions raised about the CAG report, that how did the CAG quantify, what formulas does the CAG use to quantify that it could have led to there was a revenue foregone of 60,000 crores to 1,60,000 crores, somewhere in that range. Okay. So, there were questions raised about the quality of CAG reports. Some said that the CAG report is biased. Who? Especially the Congress members argued that the CAG report is, biased, and that the whole quantification of revenue foregone was itself a very tricky issue. One thing was to say that the government followed what? The spectrum allocation on a first come first serve basis, which resulted in loss of revenue, or revenue was foregone by the government. It was better if the government would have adopted a auctioning route. That's one thing. But when you quantify the loss, the impact of the report, the political significance of the report, the impact of the report increases very substantially. I'm not getting into the details, but there's something also said in the current CAG report on Rafale, that the government on the bank guarantee to the Rafale deal. No need to get into the details, because but the CAG report said that the bank guarantee has not been really just a second. The bank guarantee has not really been, given till now, and that bank guarantee itself will come at a cost. But they have said that all these things have not been factored into the report. Nonetheless, so these are technical matters, but what essentially it means is that if you start quantifying the losses, etc., it may become more politically volatile, and questions often start getting raised about the quality of CAG reports. So CAG was being criticized left, right and center, and the question that was asked was, who will audit the CAG? If the CAG is auditing everybody, somebody must audit the CAG as well, and who will audit the CAG? And does the CAG get itself audited, so that the people who are depending on CAG reports, what do they know about the quality of CAG reports? So this was the first time that the CAG submitted itself to a peer-to-peer assessment the CAG submitted itself to a peer-to-peer assessment. The CAG submitted itself to a peer-to-peer assessment because most of whatever CAG audits were done were mostly internal audits. Internal audit का कोई मतलब नहीं है, in the sense that it has to be an independent third-party audit. Now the CAG for the first time decided to submit itself to a peer-to-peer assessment in 2012. In 2012, to the INTOSAI, the International Organization of Supreme Auditing Institutions. The CAG is the supreme auditing institution in India, the topmost auditing institution in India. Similarly, there is an organization of supreme auditing institutions of world over, of mature democracies. There are 35 members of the INTOSAI. There's 35 members of the INTOSAI. And it has the supreme auditing institutions of US, UK, Australia, Canada, etc. Okay, so that is there. This was an organization. So the CAG submitted itself to audit by this organization, where voluntarily submitted itself to this kind of an audit, where they handed over the reports for the 2010 to 11 period. And out of these 2010 to 11 period reports, the INTOSAI randomly picked up 35 reports for closer scrutiny. And randomly picked up 35 reports for closer scrutiny. In this scrutiny, what they found was that out of these 35 reports, they found, their observation said that 50% of the reports were or could have been more balanced in their assessment, or were basically at times too harsh on the executive, or basically often only highlighted what? Shortcomings or weaknesses. If an audit is being done, they argued that not just CAG reports must highlight what were the CAG reports in the scrutiny must not just highlight what were things which were not done and which could have been done. That's one thing, right? That what steps were not taken but could have been taken to improve the efficiency of government schemes, or the impact of government expenditure could have been increased if the government could have taken certain steps. Depending on what steps the government did not take, that's okay. But apart from that, if the government did take some positive steps, the CAG report must highlight that as well. जैसे अभी हो रहा है, the CAG said that in the Rafael deal, the government has managed to save some 2% of its expenditure as compared to the previous deal, and some 1 month of time, right, in the whole procurement process. Now, I've not gotten into detail of all of that. We don't need to. So basically, they argued that not just the CAG reports must not just highlight shortcomings and weaknesses, but also if the government departments have taken some positive steps, even that must be highlighted. Okay, why is that? Because if there are positive steps taken by one government department, that can be probably replicated by other government departments as well. So, not just the negative lessons learned, but also the positive lessons learned must be highlighted. So, and also at times the CAG reports have the benefit of hindsight. Once the scheme has been implemented and they are seeing the outcomes and what were the clear possible things that the schemes could have done but did not do, they have the benefit of hindsight. Once something has happened, they can go back and look at the reasons why something worked or did not work. Okay, whereas policy makers do not always have the benefit of hindsight. They may not always be in a position to predict all the consequences of their actions. Now somebody would say that, sir, that's the reason, policy makers could not have predicted all the consequences of demonetization, right? So even if, if the CAG report says that demonetization led to these problems, the CAG has a benefit of hindsight which the policy makers may not have had in the first place. Okay, that they could not have predicted all the impacts, whether on agriculture or on many other areas. So that's there. But that's what is often said, that the CAG's criticism is fine, but at the same time, at times it was found in the INTO-size assessment that CAG reports were at times a bit too harsh on the government of the day. Okay. Yes. Voluntarily, एक second. पहली बात, CAG reports are anyways in the public domain. CAG reports are anyways in the public domain, sir. The Rafael report is now in the public domain. आप भी डाउनलोड करके पढ़ सकते हैं. तो INTO-SAI को दे देने में क्या दिक्कत है? But the point is that the CAG is voluntarily appointing INTO-SAI to do the audit. ठीक है? हाँ. Is it any benefit in this in submitting this report internationally to India? Is it any? Is there any benefit? अभी रुकिए. इंटरनेशनली क्या? अरे देखिए, आप देश की इज्जत पे मत आ जाया करिए हर वक्त. देश की इज्जत नारी की इज्जत की तरह नहीं है जो हर वक्त is always endangered. Indians, तो इसका देश की इज्जत से कोई लेना देना नहीं है. इंटरनेशनल रेपुटेशन, nothing of that sort. Benefit तो domestic है sir. Benefit is for the domestic audience to know how much can they depend on CAG report, or is CAG report something which cannot be questioned at all, or is CAG report the best report? So that's a audit. Audit is for any audience which is depending on CAG's report. If a foreign observer is looking into CAG report, he'll also be as equally aware of the INTO-SAI report as perhaps a domestic observer. That's it. तो उसमें फॉरेन डोमेस्टिक का कोई मैटर नहीं है. ओके, हाँ, INTO-SAI बायस्ड. देखिए, द पॉइंट इज दैट, देखिए हमें पॉलिटिक्स नहीं खेल रहे कि कौन बायस्ड है कौन नहीं बायस्ड है. सिंपल पॉइंट है, CAG इज वॉलंटरीली सबमिटिंग इटसेल्फ. CAG को कोई धक्का नहीं है. नीदर द गवर्नमेंट कैन से, neither the government, the executive cannot say, the legislature cannot say. The CAG, in the interest of transparency, is voluntarily submitting itself. Because if the CAG is auditing every other department, a question can always be raised, and questions were being raised about the quality of CAG's report. So CAG is voluntarily submitting itself because CAG considers that internationally well recognized other supreme auditing institutions have no conflict of interest and are well respected in the international community for doing a quality audit. So why shouldn't we get an audit done from them? Okay, that is there. Now, so 50% of the reports could have been more balanced in their assessments, were either too harsh on the executive and often highlighted shortness and weaknesses, but did little to highlight but did little to highlight to highlight the positive lessons learned, if any, by government departments. Then, second, positive lessons learned, if any, by government departments. That's one thing. The second thing that they're looking at, is what? That's not all. The Intosai report said that 50% of the reports, okay, that was there, and some 25% of the reports, the observations made in them, made in reports, were often not backed by enough evidence So at times, some of the observations made in the report about the quality of or about the impact of any government scheme, some 25% of the reports had observations which were not backed by enough evidence, okay, or enough quantitative or qualitative evidence. So even there were some questions raised about quality of the CAG reports with respect to not every observation being made with respect to with sufficient evidence on board. So even that was pointed out as a issue. And that said, these were the shortcomings in the CAG findings. Shortcomings in the working of, shortcomings with respect to CAG. However, while carrying out this audit, what? While carrying out this audit, the the Intosai also consulted whom? The Intosai also consulted the Public Accounts Committee Intosai consulted the Public Accounts Committee and the Committee on Public Undertakings as well. Consulted the Public Accounts Committee and the Committee on Public Undertakings as well. And both of them were of the opinion that despite their shortcomings, the CAG reports were the most valuable set of reports which provided quality inputs to the PAC or COPU not readily available from other sources. Not readily available from other sources. So even that is a major. So despite their shortcomings, it was argued that the CAG reports are perhaps one of the most reliable sources that the PAC actually has while carrying out its function to effectively scrutinize government expenditure. So that was something about the quality of the CAG reports also. What they've said is that for CAG to improve its functioning, it's better if it also develops a culture of positive reporting also, not just pointing out deficiencies, but also positive steps taken or lessons learned from the past. That is what is there. that has been argued about the CAG report, okay, with respect to the quality. So this said, what is the, any doubts still here? Anything you want to ask? Yes. क्या उसका इश्यू? कुछ नहीं है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है सर. आप अपनी कॉपी खुद चेक कर रहे हैं. अरे इंटरनल ऑडिट आप अपनी कॉपी खुद चेक कर रहे हैं. हर गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट में अपना ऑडिट भी होता है, उसकी कोई पॉइंट नहीं है ना. आप अपनी कॉपी खुद चेक कर रहे हैं. दैट इज फॉर यू टू लर्न योर लेसन्स फॉर योर सेल्फ. बट somebody should assess, third party should assess that whether you have learned the lessons or not. आप तो कह रहा हाँ मैंने देख लिया, अपनी कॉपी चेक कर ली, जो गलती थी देख लिया, I have learned, अब नहीं है वो गलती. There must be a neutral third party observer. That is there. एक ही इंस्टीट्यूशन है सर, CAG is the only institution. COG is the only supreme auditing institution, तभी तो सुप्रीम है. इंटरनल ऑडिट बता रहा हूं मैं, अपनी कॉपी खुद चेक कर रहे हैं आप. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है, अपने आप को आप हमेशा वेरी गुड ही देंगे. आरबीआई का तो आरबीआई का कह रहे हैं लोग, आरबीआई को ऑडिट करवाओ. क्या झंडे गाड़ रही थी आरबीआई जब प्रिवेंटिव करेक्ट, व्हेन व्हाट झंडे आरबीआई वाज गार्डिंग at the time that NPAs were zooming? What was RBI doing to scrutinize? People have said already, CAG has also said, why shouldn't we do an audit of the RBI itself? As of now, the RBI Act does not allow, and there are many problems with the RTI Act also, RBI Act also, and one of them is that there is no provision for an independent third party audit of the RBI itself. चलिए और कुछ? Any other question? Now, the next thing is about the next thing. आप जाके गूगल करिए, आप देख लेंगे कि after this whole NPA things blew out of control, you can go and find in the newspaper many articles were written that why shouldn't the RBI be audited. Even one of the CAGs, previous CAGs said, Shashikant, I think Shashikant Sharma himself said that probably it is time to consider whether the RBI itself must be audited by the CAG. Okay, so that's there. तभी तो आपने RBI की ऐसी आज तक कौन सी ऑडिट रिपोर्ट पढ़ी है जिसमें RBI से सवाल पूछा जा रहा है? Okay, that's there. So वो आप अपनी कॉपी खुद चेक करेंगे, सीधी सी बात है, you'll always give very good. Okay, so it's as much as simple as that. Now, despite all these, so what are the way forward? We say, with most of the areas have been telling the way forwards already, but a few number of additional examples, a few number of other additional suggestions have been given by B.P. Mathur in his book on public accountability and government expenditures. Public accountability and government expenditure. Strengthening the CAG. So, he is firstly saying that, you know, one of the most things we have already discussed, that the CAG's appointment procedure must be made bipartisan. The PAC's term must be made coterminous. The CAG must be explicitly empowered. Must be explicitly empowered to do what? To do performance audits. to do performance audits. Right now, they do performance audits, but the CAG Act of 1970-71 only mentions the word audit. It doesn't mention the word performance audit. So they're saying that explicitly amend it and say performance audit, so that all this controversy every time they do a performance audit, questions are not raised about performance audits of the CAG. Okay, that whether it is empowered or not. They're saying that, for example, if you look at the National Audit Act of UK, it explicitly empowers to do performance audit. Next, and perhaps a very different kind of a suggestion made here also is that a very different kind of a suggestion made here is also about with respect to defense procurements. देखिए रिपोर्ट ये बुक पहले ही आ गई थी 2014, and defense procurements have always been a matter of contention and debate. So with respect to defense procurements, above a certain monetary limit, a pre-acquisition audit can be considered to deal with any controversy related to and prevent any undue delay in procurement. What are they saying is a pre-acquisition. What are they saying is a pre-acquisition audit. What does a pre-acquisition audit mean? Is, for example, that before you sign the Rafale deal itself, you get the tentative Rafale deal audited by the CAG. Before the expenditure happens, he's saying, though currently the CAG's role only comes in once the expenditure happens. That's true. But they're saying that in the interest of, that the defense procurements often get clouded into controversy. And why not allow the CAG to audit such procurement deals even before the expenditure has happened, so that the CAG report can be considered as an independent third-party view over the whole procurement matter. It will allow to address any or prevent any unnecessary controversy, and also prevent any further delay in decision making on defense procurements. So why can't this be done? So is what is a proposal. Now one may or may not agree with it, but that's a proposal. Okay, because that may involve partly going beyond the current powers of the CAG, which come into play only with respect to once the expenditure has happened. Okay, that is there. So is that point clear? That it's only once the expenditure has actually happened that all this debate normally comes up, but they're saying that why can't a pre-acquisition audit be done? Okay, that's there. अगर CAG पहले ही बता देती कि 2.8% money would be saved, then there would not have been so much heat and so much drama and all of that, right? So that is there. Is that much clear? Right. So these are some of the suggestions which are made. The CAG has given report on a variety of other issues as well. For example, on defense procurements, time to time. Now, we don't need to get into that. You'll get the handout where I've given that as a case study, as an example, that even for defense procurements, CAG reports, have been given time and again. About the state of India's defense preparedness related to defense procurements, state of preparedness. And here, for example, the CAG reports pointed out that in 2015, India did not have enough arsenal to fight 20-day war, intensive war. मतलब 20 दिन से ज़्यादा का लड़ाई चढ़ गई तो हमारे पास गोलियां खत्म हो जाएंगी. If it is a 20 days intensive two-front war. फिर 2012-17 उन्होंने बोला situation has improved. Now only we have for 10 days. I don't know since then has the condition improved or not or whatever, but that was the time. And then the students asked, hey, sir, but doesn't it impact national security? और लोगों को पता चल गया है. अरे पहली बात, nobody else is getting information about India's defense preparedness. China, Russia, US, they don't wait for CAG report. They have their intelligence bodies, they have their spy satellites, they have all the things in the world. They don't wait for the CAG to report. You get the information, sir. Those who already need to know, already know. That is why they have intelligence agencies. It is for your knowledge, not for anybody else's knowledge. And national security का कोई threat नहीं है. कोई national security का कोई threat. There is no question of national security getting threatened by these kind of reports. Okay, कोई खतरा नहीं है आपकी national security को. Just because CAG tells you that it is 2% cheaper or 5% expensive or 10 days ammunition we don't have, it is for only your consumption. That जो लोग बोल रहा है इनको भी करारा जवाब देंगे, उनको भी करारा जवाब देंगे, तो करारा जवाब देने के लिए कुछ होना भी चाहिए पीछे, right? So बंदूक है नहीं तो फिर कैसे लड़ेंगे, right? So that is there. I'm not getting into details, but that's there. गडकरी जी बोल रहे पानी रोक देंगे. ईस्टर्न रिवर्स का तो वैसे ही इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी वी आर नॉट सपोज टू. They anyways have the share on the Indus water treaty only on the western rivers, not on the eastern rivers. So where is the point? If you look at the Indus water treaty, the three eastern rivers are Indians. And the three western rivers are the Pakistani, right? The Indus, Jhelum, Chenab are the Pakistani and the Ravi based Satluj are the Indians. तो हम इसी का पानी यूज कर लेंगे तो क्या झंडे गाड़ रहे हैं? Then the question is, nahi, Prime Minister said in 2015 that blood and water can't flow together. Historically, over centuries, both blood and water have always flown together. Okay, wars and water flow have always happened. The Prime Minister said, nahi, hum rok denge. Indus water treaty will revoke. So somebody, revoke ka matlab kya hai? Will you stop flowing of water into Pakistan, say in the western rivers? Say if it is possible. Okay, suppose firstly it will not happen in 1 or 2 months, you'll have to construct dams. Suppose Pakistan also stays silent, China also stays silent. Sab chup hai. India banaye pada dam western river pe. Suppose we make that also. What will you do? We'll store all of that water. For that will also cause flooding. You'll have to make larger reservoirs. चलिए वो भी बना दिया आपने. Okay. तो ये सब आप जब करते रहेंगे, what is going to happen? All other players ultimately, चलिए ये भी सब आपने कर लिया. The narrative will shift completely against India. If the international support and sympathy is today with India, it will shift against India. Pakistan will portray India as somebody who is blackmailing them by holding on to the water. Okay. Even if this could be done, firstly this can't be done like the way it has been talked. But कर भी लिया आपने तो और पहली बात है 2019 के इलेक्शन के पहले तो नहीं होगा. That's the only point of contention. चलिए, let's not get into too much of वो. चलिए हो गया. So CAG is largely done as a topic. Any other questions you want to ask? Next issue is election commission. Okay, I'm discussing broadly some major powers, also about election commission with you, and then about electoral reforms.
So does CAG report has a particular format?
Format? No. Okay, one more thing. Now that you just asked, there's one more thing that we can add as a suggestion to strengthening CAG reports, and that is going in for more. The CAG audits can go in for more social audits. And already the CAG is carrying out certain social audits of whom? Of Narega. Social audits of Narega. Now, firstly, what is a social audit? Social audit of Narega. What is social audit? जनरल पब्लिक का व्यू ले रहे हैं, तो आपसे पूछे कि नरेगा कैसा चल रहा है, आपको क्या लगता है? इट इज नॉट जनरल पब्लिक व्यू, क्योंकि जनरल पब्लिक से पूछेंगे तो बोलेंगे नरेगा का जोश हाई है. No. Social audit is not done by taking the view of the general public. Social audit is done by taking the view of the end beneficiary or the recipient of a particular welfare scheme. So, for example, if Narega's audit is to be done in Rajasthan, CAG will get in touch with other NGOs, civil society organizations, and tell them to do a social audit in the 10 districts of Rajasthan, say picking up 40 villages, and go and talk to villagers who are working under Narega or who have previously worked under Narega, that in the last year, how many days of work did you receive? How many days of salary did you receive? How much salary did you receive? Okay, all these kind of questions, asking the questions about the impact of the scheme from the recipients or the beneficiaries of that scheme, not you. आप तो बोलेंगे हमने पढ़ा है ऐसा, scheme सही चल रही है एकदम, right? So that is not a social audit. The social audit is done by the end recipient. So in that context, the CAG can resort to more doing social audits, and that social audits often involve the view of the end recipient and are more qualitative in nature. So even social audits on a larger scale, whether आप स्वच्छ भारत का करा रहे, whichever government scheme the government is spending money on, okay, whichever proposal government is spending money on, you do its impact assessment. आप railways का करा रहे, रेल कितनी टाइम पे चल रही है, how much are people happy with the services of the railways, what do they think about the quality of whatever time, speed, whatever. So end user feedback. Okay, that is there. So that is what is a social audit. There is no specific fixed format. Okay, now yes, any doubt? Okay, so the next issue is about electoral reforms and election commission of India. This is a supremely important topic. You can definitely expect, this is election year, तो सवाल तो आने का पूरा चांस है on electoral reforms. Now, how will pre-acquisition audit help in preventing an undue delay? Is that they are saying is that once acquisition process starts, then there will be no uncertainty, going forward or going backwards on a deal. Once it has already been audited and all opposition concerns have already been addressed, and the executive can then simply move ahead without any further delay, rather than having a discussion, going ahead with the deal, then again going back on the deal, following criticisms, etc., and reworking the deal. All of that will stop, because first we said 126 fighter aircraft, then all debate, then 36, then intergovernmental agreement, this, that, etc. कोई दिक्कत ना होगा. Once you formulate the scheme, you get it audited and you go through. Smooth one line process, they're saying. Electoral Reforms and Election Commission of India. Some basic points about Election Commission of India you must know from your prelims point of view. Firstly, it is a constitutional body, right? And it is a constitutional body. Currently, there is one chief election commissioner and 2 election commissioners. So, the total strength currently is 3. It's not maximum, कोई upper limit नहीं है. 3 is current, तो 3 भी हो सकते हैं, 4 भी हो सकते हैं, 5 भी हो सकते हैं. Till 1990s, till 1992, 93 in fact, it was the Election Commission of India was a single membered body. Article 324, अरे जो है मेरे को till the time of TN session, till the time of TN session थे जो आपके वोटर आईडी कार्ड पे आपकी फोटो ले आए. It became photo voter ID cards. Okay. So till the time of TN session, it was a single member body. Article 324 to Article 329 define some of the rules and powers of Election Commission. Firstly, there is a mention of what? That the Election Commission has the whole sole powers with respect to conducting and supervising elections. With respect to conducting and supervising elections. देखिए, I'll get into this whole process of conducting and supervising elections in a minute. And the Election Commission has an important role in the conduct and supervising of elections. Which elections? All elections. ऐसे याद रख लीजिए. All elections except local government elections. Which all elections? Thus we are talking about Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, State Assembly, President and Vice President. State Assembly, President and Vice President. State Council सब में जगह है नहीं, वो भी आ जाएगा तो उसको भी टिक करने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. Okay, so that's there. Now, also what is mentioned is that there will be universal adult franchise, that everyone shall have the right to vote except under certain conditions. Do not try to remember the name of every article, number of every article. Okay, कोई point नहीं है, कोई नहीं पूछेगा. That article 326 says what? It talks about universal adult franchise. कोई नहीं पूछने वाला आपसे. Okay, what you should know is that what are the provisions. Okay, so except under certain conditions. Which conditions are they talking about? That, for example, must not be of an unstable mind. Must not be of an unstable mind, and obviously must not be in prison. ऐसा नहीं कि क्या तिहाड़ में लग रहा वोटिंग बूथ. If you are in jail, you have no such voting rights. ऐसा नहीं है कि अभी आज जेल से बाहर निकलेंगे, वोट डालने का दिन है, तो वोट भी डाला और 2-4 को और. There is no such provision. Okay, and in accordance to any limitation imposed by law. In accordance to any limitation imposed by whom? Imposed by law. Meaning, can the government tomorrow bring in a law and say that nahi, if you are not 10th pass, तो नहीं मिलेगा voting right? Yes, the government can. Because the universal adult franchise laws say the provision of the constitution says that nobody shall be discriminated against, on the basis of only caste, class, religion and all those things. Okay. But if say the government brings a uniform criteria कि अगर आपने 10वीं पास नहीं करी है तो आपको वोटिंग का कोई अधिकार नहीं है. So can the government bring such a law? Yes, the government can bring such a law. Has the government ever brought such a law? No. But though with respect to local governments, etc., they be saying ki bhai, for those who are contesting elections, something, but not on voting. I personally think people who go to IIT and IIM, they must be banned from voting. Anyways, they don't vote mostly because they're busy, because that's the only day they get off. Weekend celebration or something happens. But anyways, उनको दिमाग बिल्कुल नहीं है, ऊपर खाली है बिल्कुल. Okay, so that is there. चलिए कोई नहीं सबको होना चाहिए. I'm just joking. Now, आप बोलेंगे सर क्योंकि आप नहीं जा पाए. That is why, right? So we'll not get into all those debates. Now, universal adult franchise, conducting elections and all of those things. So that is there. Apart from this, with respect to the powers, they also have a role in delimitation. Delimitation of constituencies. You heard about delimitation of constituencies? Ma'am discussed? Already? Yes, no? जी? क्या है मैम discussed? Okay, बता दो आप सर, फिर भी है, कोई बात नहीं. 19. So basically, delimitation commission is formed. Delimitation commission is formed. I'm not getting into, so let me just say, delimitation commission is formed. Delimitation is telling the whole size of the constituency and all of those things. So delimitation has happened after every census, 52, 62, 72, right? And then 2002. 4 delimitations have happened after every census. तब बोलेंगे सर ये 1972 में इन्होंने freeze कर दिया. Till population stabilizes, they said till 2002 population will stabilize. Because one vote, one value, according to that logic, they had to do delimitation. But population of northern states, बढ़े जा रही थी, southern states was not increasing. So representation of southern states was declining. Finally, they freezed this whole thing in 1972. Chaliye, I'm not getting into details, but just you should know the composition of delimitation commission. Firstly, is it a statutory body or a constitutional body or both? Statutory है sir, it is not a constitutional body. ठीक है, हर 10 साल में एक बार बनाई जाती है. Okay, now delimitation is frozen till 2026. है ना? अभी statutory body है, what is its composition? I'm just telling, in case, yes, that there is Supreme Court, 2 Supreme Court judges or ex-judges of the Supreme Court. So that gives it a judicial nature. Plus, there is the Chief Election Commissioner or the Election Commissioner. Plus, for every state, क्या है 10 कदम, 10 representatives for every state, 5 MPs and 5 MLAs, they are consulted. That's broadly the composition of delimitation commission. Please remember, its recommendations are binding. Yes. And are binding and what? Not subject to judicial review. Ma'am has discussed. ओके, आपका रिवीजन भी हो गया एक तरीके से. फॉर द कमिंग 1 month वी विल बी इन अ फायर मोड. बस एकदम करते करते ऐसे ही रिवाइज कर लेना होता है. और कितना देर लगता है? इट टेक्स 5 minutes. ओके, सो that's about delimitation commission. Now apart from this, if this much is there, apart from this, the election commission, there are 2 acts. The Representation of People Act. Any doubt? The Representation of People Act 1950 and 1951. 1950 Act talks about that there would be a general electoral roll for voting in a constituency. There will be no categorization according to caste, religion, etc. उसका कोई कॉलम नहीं होता. आपके वोटर आईडी कार्ड पे धर्म भी बता दो और जाति भी बता दो. सो आपका जो वोटर आईडी कार्ड, देयर इज नो सेपरेट इलेक्टोरल रोल कि इस घर में रहते हैं मुसलमान. यू टेक आउट इलेक्टोरल रोल, ये और देख लीजिए, सबके घर पे एक झंडा लगा दीजिए, फिर बम डाल दीजिए. Electoral roll पे there is no mention of the caste or of the religion, neither on your voter ID card. So general electoral rolls are maintained according to the Representation of People Act 1950, and the rules with respect to conduct of elections are mentioned in the Representation of People Act 1951. Now also the Election Commission has also another role with respect to what? देखिए, Election Commission, when elections are going on, if there is any dispute, then those disputes go to the Election Commission. But in case of post-election disputes, they go to post. Once election has happened, post-election disputes go to whom? In case of president and vice president's election-related questions, they go directly to the Supreme Court. Whereas that of MP or MLA, they go to the High Court. Technically, the High Court is supposed to dispense of such matters within a year. But it does not always happen that such a matter is settled within a year. A final verdict is expected on such matters often within a year, but often it may or may not happen. Also, since 1967, what? A model code of conduct. Yes, ma'am discussed? No? Okay, I'll discuss. So, model code of conduct. Model code of conduct came into operation since 1967 onward. ये तो आप जहां भी पढ़ेंगे ये सब चीजें आपको वहां भी मिल जाएंगी. लक्ष्मीकांत जहां से आपने देखना है कहीं भी मिल जाएंगी ये सारी चीजें. But I'll get into the reforms issues in a bit. But ये basic लक्ष्मीकांत stuff है ना, जो आपको ज्यादा अच्छा लगता है. So that's a mode of model code of conduct was introduced. It was a voluntarily agreed upon. देखिए सारी voluntarily agreed upon code of conduct. देखिए अभी यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा समझ लीजिए 2 मिनट, then we can write down. Very simple thing is this. देखिए one party, देखिए 1967, 64 तक in fact largely the Congress party dominated the Indian electoral scene. Okay, the Congress party largely dominated the Indian electoral scene till 1967 or so, 64, 67. Now, as regional political parties came up, etc., there was often a competition between Congress and regional political parties. And the question was that the ruling party must not have an unfair advantage over the opposition parties going into the election. कि 10 दिन before election, 10 days before election you announce सबके अकाउंट में 5,000 रुपए आ जाएगा, है नया 6,000, 5,000, 10,000 यूनिवर्सल बेसिक स्कीम इनकम यू अनाउंस, आपने बोला आधार और पैन को लिंक कराया था, आ जाएगा उसका फल, आधार बैंक अकाउंट लिंक्ड, एवरीथिंग लिंक्ड. टुडे 5 days or 10 days before election government disperses money in all accounts, in all banks. Okay, all of a sudden you get the message 6,000 रुपए अकाउंट में आ गए, कमल को बटन दबाए. Okay, so that is there, and you see, so if that happens, that's something that may give the ruling party an unfair advantage over the opponents. And the model code of conduct was agreed upon by political parties voluntarily. It does not have a legal backing. It said that once the election is announced, once the election dates are notified, no, the model code of conduct will come into operation and the ruling party will not introduce any new scheme. साल भर आपने कोई नौकरी नहीं दी, 10 days before election 10,000 नई पोस्ट और अगले 5 दिन में भर देंगे, आज से चालू है, कल एग्जाम है और परसों रिजल्ट, और 4th डे कम एंड कलेक्ट योर अपॉइंटमेंट वो, और 5वें दिन से नौकरी पे आ जाइए और 10वें दिन आके वोट दे दीजिए. सो नहीं, यू कांट अनाउंस न्यू गवर्नमेंट पोस्ट, यू कांट ट्रांसफर. एसपी है, ये एसपी मायावती ने बोला दिस एसपी इज नॉट वेरी कंड्यूसिव टू whom this SP of police is not very, SP BSP वाला नहीं, SP पुलिस वाला, SP is not very conducive to BSP and you know she is the chief minister. ने बोला ट्रांसफर कर दो 2 दिन पहले इलेक्शन के, नहीं कर सकते. इलेक्शन कमीशन टेक्स चार्ज. So once model code of conduct comes into operation, पता चला, you tell to the police 2 महीने पहले इलेक्शन के सबको जेल में डाल दो, ऑपोजिशन वालों को, एक पे डाउरी केस लगा दो, एक पे कुछ किडनैपिंग का लगा दो, एक पे रेप का लगा दो, सबको डाल दो जेल में. Okay, and so no, cannot be done. To prevent all these kinds of misuses, whether it is policing, whether it is announcing new government scheme, whether it is transfer of government officials, all of that stops once the model code of conduct comes into operation. Can transfers happen? Yes, they can happen, but they have to be approved by the election commission. Election commission can transfer. Only election commission can transfer once the model code of conduct comes into operation. No new government scheme, no new expenditure, no new appointment, no transfers, can be done by the ruling party once the model code of conduct comes into operation. So one of the criticisms of model code of conduct, often it comes into operation, say before the general elections. If the elections say happen in, when are they supposed to happen? May. So the day, say in March, if the election commission announces, then from March to May, मोदी जी नहीं कर पाएंगे कोई नई स्कीम. एक स्कीम बचेगी, क्या? चलो पाकिस्तान, that scheme, you can declare a war. Sir, war declare करने पे कोई रोक टोक नहीं है. Okay, that is there. So, but model code of conduct comes into operation. Does it have a legal backing? No, it doesn't have a legal backing. और भी चीजें हैं model code of conduct में. 1 or 2 more things are there. कि एक दूसरे को गाली नहीं देंगे. Meaning, politicians will not indulge in personal attacks on each other. Rather, they will criticize each other's policies as well. They will only criticize each other's policies. They will not indulge in personal attacks. Or politicians will not try to ask for votes on the basis of religious or caste identities. Okay, so they will not do all these things. Okay, but you will be like कि सर ये तो होता है. That वो बोलता है कि यार चौकीदार ही चोर है, और वो बोलता है कि नहीं वो तो कांग्रेस की विधवा है, and all that. So मोदी जी said, अरे मोदी जी said, किसी और ने नहीं कहा, मोदी जी said. Okay, so this is your prime minister speaking. It's good. अगली बार, you should tell your children, we should follow मोदी जी. जब कोई जा रही होगी तो बोलना ये तो उसकी विधवा है. And then, but what will happen is, Modi ji has Z plus security cover, but your son won't. He'll be treated like a chai wala. Okay, he'll be thrashed. Okay, so that is there. चलिए कोई नहीं, हम यही रहते हैं. But ma'am told me focus more on teaching rather than on politics. I agree, but I just can't. But no, I am sticking there only. So, voluntarily agreed upon a code of conduct. चलिए छोड़िए. Under which ruling party would not enjoy any unfair advantage over opposition parties. Over opposition parties. Under the Model Code of Conduct, would not enjoy any unfair advantage over opposition parties. Under which no new government schemes can be announced or appointments made there will be a freeze on transfer of public officials. Only who can transfer? Election Commission. And political parties will refrain from personalized attacks over opponents or from invoking what? Religious identities. Or from invoking religious identities. For votes, religious or caste identities demanding votes, all of this. It does not have a legal backing. Does not have a legal backing. Chaliye. All of this is done. ठीक है. Next. One of the things also you must know that in case of any post-election disputes, though the matter go to the courts, the court takes the advisory opinion of whom? Of Election Commission, especially on issues related to office of profit. On issues related to office of profit, the Election Commission takes the advice. The Election Commission takes the the High Court takes the advice of the Election Commission on issues related to office of profit or also on issues related to office of profit, or one could say even on some other aspects as well, sub, primarily on the issues related to one was on office on profit, and the other, what they say is that an advice may also be taken on other issues also related to criminalization or violation of model code of conduct, etc. Chaliye, that's more than enough ho gaya about background. Now, one thing about the procedure of election. What happens in election? What does the election commission actually do? Now, nobody is going to ask you about the procedure of election, but I am telling so that you have some degree of idea as to where all election commission has a role of elections or procedure of organizing elections. सबसे पहले तो there is what? Delimitation of constituencies. Where which constituency, the size of the constituency, the particular constituencies are defined. Then once there is delimitation of constituencies, what happens is that a election schedule is prepared, and there is also a voter list for every constituency, and within the constituency there are a number of booths which is prepared, and this list has to be constantly what? Updated. Now this list has to be constantly updated to do what? Additions as well as deletions. Additions क्या करना है आपने? अरे नए वोटर, and deletion जो चले गए, you know, additions, deletions because of migration, because of death, because of new people becoming eligible. The list always has to be अपडेटेड. किसी ने बोला वोटर आईडी को भी आधार से जोड़ दो, पर किसी ने पूछा क्यों जोड़ रहे भाई? वोटर आईडी मस्ट ऑल्सो बी लिंक टू आधार. somebody said अरे जोड़ क्यों रहे हो? आधार के साथ है कि सबसे जोड़ दो. You keep adding Aadhaar to everything, but why? What reason are you adding, sir, Aadhaar to voter ID? Is Aadhaar a proof of citizenship? Is Aadhaar a proof of anything? No, Aadhaar is a proof of nothing. फेक वोटिंग कैसे होगा सर? कैसे? दो लोगों का एक नाम नहीं हो सकता. हाँ, दूसरे के नाम पे आके करेंगे तो वो कैसे प्रिवेंट हो जाएगा वोटर और आईडी और आधार को लिंक करने से? बायोमेट्रिक से. और जिस दिन आप वोटर कार्ड में डाल रहा है वो बोलता है अंगूठा नहीं चल रहा सर, आज मशीन रीड नहीं कर रही आपका अंगूठा. होता है ऐसा? कभी गए बैंक गए? फिर क्या होगा? ना डाले वोट, चेहरा मिल रहा है, साइन मिल रहा है, सब मिल रहा है, अंगूठा नहीं मिल रहा. पूरा बंद करना मतलब रखे भी और नहीं भी. जिसका अंगूठा हो जाए तो अंगूठे से, नहीं हो तो अंगूठे के बिना. अरे पॉइंट ये, आधार को हर जगह लिंक करे पड़े, पता ही नहीं है क्यों लिंक हो रहा है. कोई पॉइंट ही नहीं है सर, कोई पॉइंट ही नहीं है. तभी तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने सेड कि कुछ को भी सब कुछ लिंक करे पड़े. हाँ, सब कुछ आप लिंक करे पड़े. आई एम सेइंग, सजेस्टिंग समथिंग, वन शुड लिंक एवरी गोल्ड ट्रांजैक्शन टू आधार. सर वो करिए ना. जब आप सोना खरीद रहे हैं तो वो आधार से लिंक करिए, फिर आएगा मजा. That is the thing. Aadhaar is being linked to certain things. Most things are useless things. Doesn't solve any problem. Aadhaar can be used to track transactions. Aadhaar and PAN are linked. That's the only thing which is mandatory to be linked, Aadhaar and PAN. If you link gold transactions and land purchase transactions to Aadhaar, फिर देखिए अल्टीमेटली गरीबों को, भिखारी को आधार लिंक कराना है। 2 किलो चावल चाहिए, आधार। हॉस्पिटल में फ्री ट्रीटमेंट चाहिए, आधार। बच्चा पैदा हुआ, आधार। गोल्ड ट्रांजैक्शंस, रियल एस्टेट ट्रांजैक्शंस, दीज आर नॉट लिंक्ड टू आधार। बीच में करप्शन, अरे ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। आधार इज अ सोल्यूशन इन सर्च ऑफ अ प्रॉब्लम। चलिए हम यही रहते हैं, ये तो हमारी डिबेट चल सकती है बड़ी लंबी, क्योंकि आधार में बड़ी इंटेंसिव डिबेट है ना। माय ओपिनियन, हाँ तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन है, बिल्कुल है। तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में बड़ा, देखिए क्या होता है बड़ा, मैं आपको बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग बताता हूं। जस्ट बिकॉज यू सेड सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने आधार पे एक डिसीजन दिया, तो लोगों ने बोला कि देखो 4 जजेस ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेंच said Aadhaar is fine. Only Chandrachud said, Aadhaar is a clear violation. Even when they said it is fine, they said only link PAN and Aadhaar. No other linkage must be made mandatory. That is what they said. That itself is an admission, sir, that Aadhaar doesn't solve corruption. That it's, आपने वर्डिक्ट पढ़े तो जाके, और चंद्रचूड़ तो बोल रहा है ये भी नहीं होना चाहिए, कुछ भी आप मैंडेटरी नहीं कर सकते because of biometrics and its implications etc. whatever. Okay, it is not mandatory now for any scheme, right? पीडीएस वीडीएस के लिए, हाँ गरीब, मैं बता रहा हूं ना, 2 किलो चावल में देश का सारा प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगा। ऑल करप्शन इज देयर इन पीडीएस, सर। ओके, बट कोई बात नहीं। और देन पीपल सेड कि वन ई गवर्नेंस और आधार अलग चीज है, सर, बिल्कुल ही अलग चीज है ई गवर्नेंस एंड आधार। वंस आई विल डिस्कस ई गवर्नेंस विथ यू। हैज इट बीन डिस्कस्ड? यस। हाउ मेनी पीपल? यस, इट हैज बीन डिस्कस्ड। तो अगर इट हैज बीन डिस्कस्ड, देन ई गवर्नेंस एंड आधार आर टोटली डिफरेंट थिंग्स। ई गवर्नेंस एंड आधार का कोई लेना देना नहीं है। यू कैन हैव ई गवर्नेंस विदाउट आधार एंड यू कैन आधार विदाउट ई गवर्नेंस। ओके, दैट इज देयर। चंद्रचूड़ सेड समथिंग, सो बस आपको एक इंटरेस्टिंग बात बता रहा हूं। तो पीपल कन्वीनियंटली फॉरगॉट चंद्रचूड़'s verdict. Then Supreme Court on Sabrimala verdict also there was a dissenting judgment by Indu Malhotra. People kept saying इनको भूल जाओ। I think it was 3 कितने बेंच का था? 5 bench only. Yeah, so I think so then people said नहीं इंदु मल्होत्रा को सुनो, ये डिसाइड कर लीजिए कि डिसेंटिंग वर्डिक्ट को पढ़ना भी है कि नहीं। Firstly, dissenting verdict is very rare in the Supreme Court. Constitution benches normally, just because it's happened in quick succession twice doesn't mean that it happens very often. It's very rare that the Supreme Court, a constitution bench, gives a dissenting verdict. Okay, it's pretty rare, and those instances have been few and far between, like the 4:1 in the ADM Jabalpur case, or the 7:6 in the Keshav Nanda Bharti case. Okay, this has been pretty rare, but चलिए छोड़िए, अब हम यही रहते, हो गया बस, बहुत भटक जाते हैं रास्ता। वापस आ जाए। डिलिमिटेशन हो गया, वोटर लिस्ट, कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी, everything is there. Okay, now once this is done, what they are saying is the role of elections is that elections must be free and fair. मतलब money power, muscle power, all of this must be tackled, right? Elections must be conducted, all of that must be there, and there is also involves a election as well as post-election disputes. Now, most of the issues that we will look at are with respect to this free and fair conduct of elections, whether that's about money power or muscle power or a variety of other issues. Electoral reforms में और भी चीजें हैं, okay, that we'll get into. Let's get into the discussion. This is broadly enough about their broad things that they need to do. चलिए, अरे रुक जाइए, अभी नहीं जाना है. एक तो छोटा इश्यू तो पढ़ के जा ही सकते हैं. एक तो to 5 o'clock till will continue. Electoral reforms. The first electoral reform issue is with respect to, okay, one thing I did not tell you, we'll discuss that here itself. With respect to appointment and removal procedure. With respect to appointment and removal procedure in the Election Commission of India. देखिए, appointment procedure के साथ what are the issues? Firstly, the appointment, just like the CAG's appointment, the Election Commission or the appointments of the Chief Election Commissioner and the Election Commissioners is done by whom? Done by the President or done by the Executive. ये बार बार President बोल के बच्चे confuse आते हैं. Executive मतलब President on the advice of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. हो गया, है ना? So it's done by the Executive. However, there is no role for whom? Opposition. वही है, exactly it is similar to whom? CAG. The two most important constitutional bodies, their appointment procedure has little or no say for the opposition, no role for the opposition. It has been suggested that by the second ARC, by the Law Commission also, that the appointment procedure must be a multi-membered and a bipartisan it must be a multi-membered and a bipartisan process. It must be a multi-membered and a bipartisan process. मतलब leader of opposition must also be there, the prime minister must also be there, law minister को भी बैठा लो, speaker सबको बैठा लो. आजकल नया ट्रेंड है, चीफ जस्टिस को भी बैठा लो. अरे चीफ जस्टिस उनके अपॉइंटमेंट तो कर ले जजेस के. Chief Justice, this whole trend, they in most of the second ARC recommendations and Law Commission recommendations, they did not talk about the Chief Justice. It's only a newer trend which has arisen. But it is practically not very possible for the Chief Justice to listen to constitutional bench petitions also, sit in collegium also, do judicial appointment also, and now do appointment of constitutional dignitaries also. अरे कैसे काम करेगा? क्या सोएगा नहीं क्या? Unlike the Prime Minister, not every judge wants to work 18 hours a day. The Prime Minister works, but not everybody works 18 hours a day. It's not possible कि सुबह भी काम कर रहे हैं, घर को भी कर रहे हैं, रात को भी कर रहे हैं, सुबह भी कर रहे हैं, हर time. नहीं, that's not how it works. So in that context, you see some bipartisan procedure involving the opposition. Why? Because for conducting free and fair election, it is important that the opposition must also have confidence in the election commission, its impartiality and its neutrality. In Bangladesh right now, sir, Sheikh Hasina ji came to power. Now questions were being raised about the neutrality and impartiality of the whole electoral process, including of the election commission itself. So such questions must not arise, and for that it is better that whoever is appointed in consultation with the ruling party and the leader of the opposition also. Their term is what? How much is their term? 6 years or 65 years? ये reappointment में क्या हो सकता है? बस that EC can become CEC. CEC cannot be reappointed. Please remember, Reappointment में election commissioner can become chief election commissioner, but CEC cannot be CEC cannot be reappointed. EC can be appointed as CEC only. No. EC can only be appointed as CEC. से कहते हैं confidence. चलिए कोई नहीं. Now EC can be appointed as only CEC. Now the chief election commissioner. Okay, what about removal? See, the best way is to study a provision and the problem with it together. Okay, in terms of the removal procedure, the CEC is removed similar to a Supreme Court judge. But what about election commissioners? The election commissioners would be removed, can be removed by the president by a simple executive decision after taking the opinion of CEC. मुझसे सवाल मत पूछिएगा कि सर CEC की रिकमेंडेशन बाइंडिंग है कि नहीं है, मेरे को नहीं पता, आज तक कभी ऐसा हुआ नहीं. Firstly that CEC was asked for an opinion and CEC gave an opinion, ऐसा कभी हुआ ही नहीं आज तक. Okay. अब जब होगा तब ये बात होगी that the constitution says this. Now if the CEC's advice is being followed or not being followed, it's all hypothetical question. The point is that the CEC's advice has to be taken. ये बच्चे बार बार पॉलिटी में एक तरह का सवाल ही पूछते हैं कि सर अगर ऐसा हो गया तो सर वो तो नहीं पता है, तभी तो लॉयर हैं, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल lawyers then give their own interpretation. They go back to constitutional assembly debates, look at what has been said and then try to give a interpretation. आप बोलते हैं सर लगी लक्ष्मीकांत में तो ये लिखा है. अरे लक्ष्मीकांत में लिखने होने से कुछ नहीं होता है. When that matter really becomes a matter of constitutional debate, लक्ष्मीकांत बदल जाएगा. Okay, the very next edition of Lakshmikant will say कि नहीं, ऐसा has been interpreted by the court as this. तो खत्म. Whereas the Lakshmikant is not constitution. Constitution has not been derived from Lakshmikant. Okay, so that is there. Now, so the removal procedure, there is a clear difference between how the chief election commissioner and the election commissioner can be removed. Also, one thing about their salaries and pensions. Salaries and pensions are charged on the consolidated fund of India. What about CAG? They are also charged on the consolidated fund of India. Now, also please remember, ये जो मैं point बता रहा हूँ next is very important. Their expenditure is what? Not charged. क्या बोल रहा हूं मैं? Expenditure is not charged on the consolidated fund of India. Salaries and pensions are, but election commission if requires say 5,000 crores or say 3,000 crores to conduct election, that expenditure is not charged on the consolidated fund of India. Means it is votable, means it is released by the executive. Do you get it? That's important. But CAG ka expenditure all is charged, not just salaries, even expenditure is charged. One more point is that the ECI, its own secretaries, etc., its administrative staff is provided by whom? The executive. But here the CAG has to be, it is mandatory to consult CAG while appointing officers to it. And they also have their what? Separate cadre, right? The CAG has a separate cadre, the Indian Audit and Account Service. आप जो ग्रुप ए सर्विसेज भरते हैं उसमें दिस वन सर्विस, इंडियन ऑडिट एंड अकाउंट सर्विस, that goes under the CAG's office. Okay, so their auditors etc are recruited by a separate specialized cadre, which is not the case with election commission. I am just telling so that you remember the comparison. Is this point clear? Yes? कोई doubt? Do you get this point? The Indian Audit and Account Service, and here the secretaries are provided by the executive. No doubt, right? Clear? कुछ पूछना है? Clear? Yes. हाँ तो तभी मैं पूछ रहा था क्या? What is not clear? This. Okay. CAG, अच्छा, writing is not clear. It is mandatory to consult the CAG while appointing officers to it, to its office. Who is appointing? The executive. But the executive has to consult the CAG. And the Indian Audit and Account Service is a separate cadre meant only for the CAG. Whereas for election commission में अभी joint secretary बनाना है election commission में, who appoints? The executive. Okay, it's not that the election commission will recruit its parallel joint secretary on its own. ऐसा नहीं कर सकता election commission. It doesn't have the power to independently man itself. As of now, it doesn't have those powers. So I hope this is clear. चलिए, if that is there, let's talk about issues with respect to removal and expenditures of CAG. Sorry, CEC and EC. Removal में what has been argued is, देखिए ये केस हुआ था 2009 में, दो महान लोग थे. I'm just telling you this because this controversy you must know before you rattle it down, before you memorize it, you know, or you may have already memorized it. The controversy was between Naveen Chawla, who was then a newly appointed election commissioner in, was a newly appointed election commissioner, and the then chief election commissioner, and that was N. Gopalaswamy. The N. Gopalaswamy had been appointed by Congress, had been appointed by BJP before. N. Gopalaswamy had been appointed by the BJP, okay, and Naveen Chawla had been appointed by Congress. Okay, so Gopalaswamy and Chawla did not have, they had a lot of tussle on a number of issues. So Gopalaswamy recommended the removal of Naveen Chawla. Okay, to whom? The government. And then whose government was there at the center? Congress. So Congress, इससे पहले Congress could say anything. Naveen Chawla filed a PIL in the Supreme Court and said that Gopalaswamy cannot recommend my removal because the government did not ask for the opinion of the CEC. The CEC cannot suo moto recommend the removal of the election commissioner. He cannot do so. So obviously the removal of Naveen Chawla did not happen. But also the question was raised. The election commission has repeatedly recommended since then, and even the law commission has recommended that there must be no disparity in terms of the status of CEC and election commission. The CEC is only first amongst the equals. And so ideally, law commission and election commission have recommended that the procedure of removal of CEC must be exactly similar to that of election commissioner. Do you get this point? So that basically they said, why is it necessary? Because there is no defined responsibilities of CEC which are over and above that of EC. It was that the Election Commission's office was created first and there was only one, that was the Chief Election Commissioner. So the constitution must be amended and a constitutional amendment must be passed to bring parity in the removal procedure of both Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioner. Is that point clear? Yes. So ये कंट्रोवर्सी की में ज्यादा याद रखने का जरूरत नहीं है, but what you need to remember is that in the removal procedure, amendment has been suggested. In the handout that you'll get some of the details of this as well. Amendment has been suggested under which amendment has been suggested under which amendment has been suggested under which by both Law Commission and Election Commission the need to bring parity between the removal procedure of Election Commissioner and Chief Election Commissioner has been emphasized. Parity. To bring parity between removal procedure of Election Commissioner and Chief Election Commissioner has been emphasized. I hope that is clear. Now, as the Chief Election Commissioner is only first amongst the equals. Next, chaliye, there is another issue. हाँ जी. The Constitution says the Election Commissioner may have a Chief Election Commissioner, a Chief Election Commissioner or more to carry out free and fair or to carry out the conduct of elections. It does not say anything that the Chief Election Commissioner is superior to the Election Commissioner. It says one or more Election Commissioners may be appointed. Okay. So the word chief का मतलब ये नहीं है that the Chief Election Commissioner has any powers over and above what? EC. If two Election Commissioners decide a decision, even if the Chief Election Commissioner disagrees, they will prevail over the Chief Election Commissioner. It's currently a 3-membered body. All decisions that they make were made by a majority. Okay, so if two Election Commissioners agree, but the Chief Election Commissioner does not agree, it's not that the Chief Election Commissioner has some veto power or anything. There is no difference in terms of their powers or responsibilities. So why should be any difference in the removal procedure? With respect to their appointment procedure, there is no difference. With respect to their powers, there is no difference. Then why should be there a difference with respect to removal? इसमें नहीं ऐसा कुछ. That's what we are saying. No, there is no difference in terms of their powers or their responsibilities. Then why should be there a difference in terms of their removal procedure? Clear? Last thing is about expenditure. परेशान मत होइए. Simple है ये. इसमें what is there? Very simple. Tomorrow we'll finish election commission. So tomorrow will be more substantive issues that we'll be discussing it. Electoral bonds or FPTP. Ma'am has already discussed first past the post system. No. So that I'll discuss in detail because there is a good chance of a question there. FPTP versus proportional representation, issues and challenges. चलिए अभी रुक. Expenditure is what? Not charged. What has been recommended? Law Commission and Election Commission are saying, please. They are saying that please charge our expenditures or charge the expenditures of charge the expenditures of CEC on Consolidated Fund of India. Charge the expenditures on the Consolidated Fund of India. ये कह रहे हैं. ये इसके पीछे की डिबेट है बहुत लंबी. You will get it in the handout. And the debate was, this matter became a real matter of discussion again in 2013. What happened in 2013 was that all this discussion of voter verified paper audit trail had started. People are saying, क्या रे election हम नहीं हार रहे हैं, हमें तो जनता का समर्थन है. People are already voting for us, but आप कोई भी बटन दबाएं, vote is going to BJP. कमल ही खिल रहा है. Okay, so they said that voting is rigged, so we want VVAT. So okay, VVAT had to be introduced. So in 2013 there was a PIL in the Supreme Court. Matter went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, ask the Election Commission, by when are you introducing voter verified paper audit trail? Election Commission said, we are trying our best, but we will not be in a position to introduce in 2014 general elections. For all constituencies it won't be possible. There is not enough time. So they said, okay, chalo. And then in 2000, they said that by next, Election Commission said that by next general election, sir, in 2019 हम कर देंगे for all constituencies VVAT. But then in 2016 Supreme Court asked with respect to the PIL, भाई कहाँ तक पहुंची बात? How far have you progressed in that direction? Election Commission of India told the Supreme Court that what? The executive was yet to release funds. So they could not buy new voter verified paper audit trail machines. So they told the Supreme Court that the executive had not released funds. The executive had not released funds. If the executive had not released funds, they said, what can we do? You know, the executive needed to release funds something around 3,800 crore as a one-time expenditure. The executive had not released funds. So they said, it's being delayed. We can't help it. Finally, Supreme Court reprimanded the government. Arey, do paisa. Then government released the funds. And this caused a delay of 2 years. It is expected that by 2019, they will be able to procure VVAT for all constituencies, but this has unnecessarily delayed the whole process by 2 years. So the question was that why should the Election Commission be dependent upon release of funds by the government when it's supposed to carry out the whole conduct of law and order. So that is largely what was the issue. So please remember that it is currently their expenditure is not charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. See the option carefully. If the option says their expenditures are charged, it's a wrong statement. If the option says that salaries and pensions are charged, it's a correct statement. salaries and pensions of Supreme Court and High Court judges are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. True or false? हाँ, false है, false है ना, वो आप जो कह रहे हैं वो सही है कि हाई कोर्ट का पेंशन जो है जजेस का, दैट इज चार्ज ऑन कंसोलिडेटेड फंड ऑफ द स्टेट. गलत नहीं करना है आते हुए भी कि जोश में होश नहीं खोना है. ऑलवेज वेयर अ हेलमेट एंड रीड द ऑप्शंस carefully. Okay, that is there. Okay, now I'm not getting into too much detail, but this is kind of enough for your first major issue. Next issue that we have to discuss is, I hope you're not finding this fast. Fast तो नहीं लग रहा आपको? हाँ, बस ठीक है, बहुत अच्छी बात. Now the next issue to be discussed is going to be the issue about. The next issue that we're going to discuss is going to be the issue about criminalization of politics, or the entry of criminals into politics. But that we'll discuss in the next class, because otherwise it will span out for almost half an hour or 40 minutes. I don't want to break the flow. Tomorrow, tomorrow we'll carry forward discussion and we'll see if we can finish electoral reforms tomorrow. Thank you.